Hi, everybody, and welcome to another class of Tanya. Tonight we're studying chapter 33. Just a small reminder of last week's discussion, chapter 32. The rabbi mentioned, and I showed you with you the example of three painters who were asked to paint a prince who has no leg and is blind in one eye. One described him the way he is, the other one tried to hide those parts. And the third one is utilizing the fault into an attribute by putting a scope or the gun scope on his left eye and putting him on the horse where the other leg has to be on the other side. And we discovered that the idea of relating to other people must be done. There are two ways. One is knowing different attitudes, but the Rebbe in Tanya is that when someone is inferior, when someone misbehaves, when someone does not follow the path, not only it's not something to make us not like the person, but quite the opposite, utilize it and realize that it's for a purpose and there is a place for improvements, and therefore it should earn our respect and our attention. And all three were true, correct. In this chapter, the rabbi can.
This one would have been to portray him exactly how he was.
But that's not so complimentary about the person. Everybody who sees the painting will see right away it sticks out. That's the idea, that you do not show the fault, but you turn the deficiency, so to say, into a positive. But again, there is merits to each one of the three. The Chabad way, the Alter Rebbe's way, is the third one. In this chapter, the Rabbi continue about joy, and actually it is a foundation to the idea of joy and the God's true unity. And let me share with you an introduction, few stories, and then we'll continue on. I'll give you a summary of what we're studying, and this way I'll be able to read quick. This is the foundation to the idea of joy. The Rebbe, there was a Chassid by the name of Reb Zalman Schneerson, a very famous Chassid. In his old age, he could not walk. And one day, and the doctors did not allow him to drink anymore, to say l'chaim. Came Simchat Torah. The two things a Chassid need is what? To say l'chaim, to drink, and to dance. He couldn't do either one. So he asked a young Chassid to bring him Tanya and start reading from chapter 33. And when he read the first line, as we'll see soon, he said to him, "Stop, it's plenty." And he suddenly got up and danced like a young child. And the people watching couldn't believe it because he did not have the energy, but yet the ability, the idea that the reason for joy is so powerful that it can impact our body. There was a famous Chassid from Montreal. His son is a rabbi in Florida, I believe, in Hollywood, Florida, who was very close with the Rebbe. I believe the story happened in the 60s. And he once told the Rebbe that something bothers him tremendously. What bothers him? He says there is a famous Chassid in Montreal called Reb Peretz. Peretz. This Peretz was so devoted to God and to study of Torah. He was a holy man, yet he was very poor. He was so poor that his coat, his jacket had holes, so bad so that whenever he wanted to visit with the Rebbe, he needed to borrow a coat from somebody else. And yet, he told the Rebbe, there is a movie star in Hollywood, it's a she, that she is very empty of content, and she makes $5 million a year. Now says the Rebbe, the Chassid to the Rebbe, I don't understand. It says in the Bible, King David says, God says, I have all the silver, I have all the gold. How come? It's not fair that God does not give silver and gold to people who are devoted to God, and those who do the opposite and preach for things that far from what God is, they make $5 million a year. In response, the Rebbe said to him that this Chassid Reb Peretz really not only don't care, he don't even realize that he has holes in his coat. It means nothing to him, but he's truly a happy man. He's very content. He's extremely, extremely content. But the Hollywood star, the Rebbe says, she makes $5 million, but she's very depressed, internally very unhappy. And the Rebbe continued and says, in few months, you will see what I just told you. And a couple of months later, that person committed a suicide out of depression. Could be it was overdose, but I don't know the names and I don't know of the star, but I think I can guess who it is. In other words, joy is not dependent on having material or anything else. It's all about how we feel inside. And finally, the last point I want to make as an introduction. Somebody asked the Lubavitcher Rebbe, how come with the Hasidic teaching, women became extremely happier? Until before, if you follow Jewish history, women were always at the home, caring for their husbands and children, but they weren't as happy. What Hasidic teaching did is bringing joy to them to a much greater degree than men, even though men are supposed to be happy. And the Rebbe explained the following. The Rebbe says, what does Hasidic teaching does? Hasidic teaching comes to explains why. Why serve God? What's the purpose of our life? How do we connect with God? That's what Hasidic teaching does. Who is the one who can serve God to a greater degree between men and women? It's women, because women have many more opportunities to serve God by caring for their husband and children. So all day long, they do what God wants. Therefore, it arouses their joy to a much greater degree than men. In order for the Rebbe to assist us with joy, the Rabbi is going to introduce a Hasidic understanding of what we say God's unity. There is a mitzvah, know today, v'yadata hayom, you should know today that God is the only one and there is none else in the heavens above and on the earth below. There's a famous verse in the book of Deuteronomy. One of the God's commandments is to know that there is only one God. The simple interpretation means there is one God, no two gods, no other God. But aside from God, there is the universe, and there is me, and there is you. And we do not contradict God. God is the king. Hasidic teaching, based on Tanya, as we're going to see in a moment, is totally different. When we talk about true unity of God, it means that there is only God, and there is none else. Not me, not you, not the table, not the universe. Everything else is God. And therefore, there is only one God. By understanding God's true unity, it will bring us joy, because the fact that we are part of God, it will help us overcome challenges. It will help us give a purpose in universe and assist us in living a fulfilled life.
Sinning, we're still part of God.
What?
Even when we are sinning, we're still part of God.
We are God, yes. That's the Tanya. So there is no conflict between us and God, or the universe and God, except human being has a choice to cut themselves off of God temporarily, but that's not the discussion. The discussion is about the true source of joy. Let's start reading it. I am reading on page 442, chapter 33. In chapter 31, the Alter Rebbe discussed various means of arousing joy to counteract the sadness brought on by contemplation of one's spiritual failings. In chapter 32, 3 resumes this discussion. I think I told you chapter 32 was brought in the middle, and it's right in the middle, smack in the middle of a topic. 31 was about joy. Now the Rebbe continues about joy. Yet, says the Rebbe, another means of leading one's soul to true joy especially at those specific times when one finds it necessary to purify his soul and illuminate it with a gladness of heart, when we feel that we need the energy that comes with joy. Joy equals energy. And there are times that energy will enable us to overcome difficulties. Joy will help us. Let him then think deeply and picture in his intellect and understanding the subject of God's true unity. Once we understand the idea that Rebbe is talking about God's true unity, it will enable us to be very joyous. True unity means not only that there is but one God, one creator, but that furthermore, God is the only existing being. Nothing truly exists outside of him. As will be explained further, the Rabbi is going to tell us not only there is one God and no two gods. What we are commanded to accept is that there is one God and there is nothing else. No other existence outside of God. Let him consider how he permeates all worlds, both upper and lower. Just as the soul pervades the body, thereby animating it, so does God permeates all the worlds. This indwelling refers to the divine life force which adapts itself to each individual creation's capacity to receive it. And for this reason, the Alter Rebbe distinguishes here between the upper worlds and lower worlds. In the upper, more spiritual worlds, the revelation of this life force is greater, since their capacity is greater. And let them further consider how even this world is filled with his glory. This refers to the divine life force which encompasses all worlds and which animates them as if from above without adapting itself to the particular nature of each created being, so that even this physical world is filled with his glory, and how everything is of no reality whatsoever in his presence. So let's just summarize what we just read. Says Rabbi, just like the soul, my soul animates my body. Every part of my body gets energy from the soul. What happens if someone loses the energy from the soul? The senses of that part do not work. He has no sense in his hand, he has no smell, whatever it might be. So the soul is one, but the soul will permeate or enliven the entire body in two forms. There are two forms. One is a general, making you alive, and the other is in the particular part of the body. The legs, the heel need different type of energy than my heart and my mouth, than my ears, than my head, etc. So the Rebbe, but at the end of the day, the entire human being is not a contradiction, not a separate entity from the soul. The entire human being is the soul. Says the Rebbe, the God in regards to the universes, there are spiritual universes, like the head who sends the soul more than the legs, the torso, more in the heart, you feel the soul much more. In the universes, there are different universes, just like a human body. And therefore, the fact that there are different levels does not change the fact that God brings energy to all of them equally. He is one alone in the upper and lower realms, just as he was alone prior to the 6 days of creation. When nothing existed apart from God, so too now, when all the worlds have come into being, he is still one alone, since all of creation is not before him, as will be explained further. Even in the very place where this world, the heaven and the earth and all their hosts was created, he alone then filled this space. The Rebbe is saying, the universes are so minute and so invaluable compared to God that it doesn't make a difference. Let me use a simple example. Before I was married, I was a single man. So at home, at my bedroom, I was the only one. I was alone. Now I'm married. Can I say I'm still alone? The answer is no, because there is another person in the house. And if I have children, there are more persons in the house. But if you take a grain of dirt and enter into the floor, put it on the floor, will it make a difference to say I'm not alone in the house? The answer is no. Even objects in the house, there is a vase, there is a plants in the house. It doesn't mean that I'm not alone, because their value, their quality is so insignificant compared to a human being that you can't call it that I'm not alone, I'm with somebody else. Only another human being, no matter how minor, how small, how makes it that I'm not alone. So for God, the universe, the entire universe, all the galaxies are like a small thing, a speck of dirt that has no value, and therefore there is only God and nothing else. What?
See, you're alone in the house, so you can say you're alone. God is always with you. God is in you. You're in God.
So when I say, you're making a good point, but what I'm in relations to other entities, not to God. God is everywhere. So I'll never be able to say I'm alone. And actually, the rabbi is going to talk about it to prevent us from being depressed, is the idea that God is with me no matter where I am. Even when someone is in complete sin and disobeying God, it does not change. He cannot remove himself from God. You cannot get rid of God. Just like I cannot get rid of my soul unless a person is dead. No matter how much I hate my soul, no matter how bad I behave, it does not change my soul from not being in part of my body. Says the Rebbe, the same is true now. He is one alone without any change whatsoever, for in relation to him, the very existence of all created beings is utterly nullified, so that from his perspective, as it were, everything remains just as it was prior to creation. So therefore in prayer we say, Ata wad shelo nivra olam, you are before the world was created, and you are after the world was created. What we mean, the Hasidic teaching is, it did not have any impact whatsoever when God created all the galaxies and all the universes. Just before and after, during and after, did not make any change, did not take any capacity, did not take any place, because it's so insignificant. It's hard for us to understand. The examples we're using, and the rabbi is going to bring examples, are just from our physical universe. But God is a different, it's not even an entity. God is everything, and therefore, we are part of God. It's therefore, nothing has changed. The Alter Rebbe here introduces an analogy which traces to early evolution of an idea or a desire from the moment that it first occurs in one's mind and heart. At that stage, the idea or desire is formless, not yet having the shape or form of words. It is pure desire, pure idea. The desire of an English-speaking person, for example, feels no different from that of a Hebrew speaker. Let me give you an introduction of what the rabbi is going to talk about. We studied it in chapter 20 and 22, 21st and 22nd. We spoke about words, a word of a person speaking, and we compare that to how many billions of words we speak throughout our lifetime, if you remember that. If I have an emotional sense, I love somebody, and I'm thinking about how to plan my anniversary, what anniversary gift I'm going to give, the feeling themselves are so far removed from words yet, because it's a sense in my heart. That sense, no matter what language you speak, is the same by you, by me, or by someone speaking in Arabic or Chinese or Japanese. They all sense equally the same. The heart sense the same. Now, when you start thinking about it, you have the words of the emotions. It's not even other words that were uttered, but you have those words who come naturally. They are completely insignificant. You know why? Because if I change my feeling, those words are gone. They have no value. The only reason I'm using those words in my thought is because my sense of feeling exists in a certain given moment. Says the Rebbe, think that the universe comes to God's mind because he desires it. So that those words that create the universe, as we studied, that God used the 10 utterances to create the universe, are so insignificant that they have no value, and therefore it didn't change before or after they were created. That's the point the rabbi is making. The rabbi is going to use another example, which is the sun. The sun's ray, the light that the sun emits. Where is it more powerful? Where it's closer to the sun or farther? Naturally, it makes sense that if the sun's light, the very far, 100 miles away, is very powerful, provide energy, heat, light. In the sun itself, it should be much more powerful. Yet, in the sun itself, that light don't exist. It's nullified. It's gone. And the reason is because in comparison to the sun itself, it has no value. You know where it felt? You know where it have an impact? When it's far removed from the sun itself. Therefore, says the Rebbe, for us, the universe is like the sunlight, the creation God creates the sunlight. In the sun itself, it has no. For me, I am like the light who is created very far removed from the sun, but the sun itself has no value. The same is about the rabbi is going to. It's a known example of a candle. A candle in the middle of the night has a very powerful impact. Changes, bring light. Put it in the middle of the day outside in the park, it has no value. Nobody understands what the candle is doing now. Did the candle ever change? No. But the sun came out. Once the sun comes out, it does. Says the Rebbe, the God is like the sun, and we are like the sun's light, created from God, and therefore it's insignificant. We become significant when we are far removed from God. And here is the Rebbe, the Rabbi Weinberg, the author of this, the interpretation explained. It is only when it reaches the stage of applied or practical thought that the idea or desire takes the form of what are called letters of thought, which may later be expressed in speech. Now, the letters of thought and speech are, of course, certainly contained in the original idea or desire. It is only that at that point, their existence is completely nullified. It is as though these letters were non-existent, only the idea or desire is felt. Stated in the terms which the Alter Rebbe employs, the idea and desire are described as part of the 10 soul powers, which are 3 Chabad belongs to the intellects, and 7 Midot, emotions, comprise one's emotional range. These 10 faculties are the source and root of thought and speech, for one thinks and speaks of that which he understands or feels. These faculties are called the substance and essence of the soul, in comparison with thought and speech, which are merely the soul's garments, that is, the modes of external expression. To relate the analogy to the point under discussion, every created being derives its existence and life force from divine speech, that is, the letters of God's command that created it. Since nothing is outside God, this creative speech and the being created thereby are contained within God in the same way as the words one speaks were previously contained within the desire of their heart. All of creation is therefore nullified before God, just as the letters of speech are nullified within the idea or desire which is their source, where only the desire is felt, not the letters. As in the Alter Rebbe's words, I hope I summarized it well. The words that you use to think about you feeling in the heart have so little value compared to the sensation that you have in your heart, that they are meaningless, because they are there just to express how you feel. If you change the way you feel, those words are totally gone. Says the Rebbe, when God created the universe, he used the 10 ordinances because he had this desire. He used those words were the source of the creation. Therefore, they are so invaluable. There is so different distance between God and those words that it's considered as if it doesn't exist.
Speech is fun, what has value.
What speech has value? So the rabbi is going to talk about God gave us the Torah, and God gave us prayer, And God gave us the power of speech to use in a positive way. And when we do that, it brings pleasure to God. And in fact, those words will stay forever. How do I know? Because the Torah said so. We'll get there. Right now, we want to understand the true unity of God. The point, I don't want you to veer off the point. True unity of God is the understanding that everything is God. And when God was here before the universe was created or after it was created, it has no significance for God. Yet at the same time, God desired to have us here for a purpose. So therefore, we should be so joyous that God cares to have us exist here. That's the point the Rabbi is going to make. In the Alter Rebbe's words, all created beings are nullified before God, just as the letters of speech and thought are nullified within their source and root, that is, the soul's substance and essence, meaning its 10 faculties of Chachma, Bina, Das, and the Midot, and the emotions, in which there are no letters as yet, prior to their being clothed in the garments of thought, as has been explained in length at chapter 20 and 21. See there, in chapter 20 and 21, the Rabbi, we went to a great lengthy discussion over that. Elsewhere, this idea is further illustrated by an analogy from the physical phenomenon, the nullification of the sun's radiance and light within its source, the celestial orb of the sun. For surely its radiance and light glow and spread forth thereto, more strongly, in fact, than they spread forth and glow in the space of the universe. Being close to its source, the light is more intense, but there, within the sun, its very existence is nullified within that of its source. It is as though the light were absolutely non-existent. All that is seen within the sun is the sun itself, not the light, which is merely the product and offshoot of the sun. Again, what the Rabbi is saying, I think we discussed it before, the ray of this, or the light of the sun in the sun should be much stronger because it's closer to its source. Yet it's totally non-existent. You won't see it. And the reason is because when it's close to the sun, in comparison to the sun, it has no value, and therefore it does not have any effect at all. Same is about our creation. In the letters or words of thought or emotions are no value. This will be better understood in terms of saying of what good is a candle in the daylight. Naturally, the candle is no less luminous by day than by night. But because its light is overwhelmed by the far greater brightness of daylight, it no longer fulfills its function of illumination. At this point, it ceases to exist as a luminary. This same is true in the sun's rays as they are within the sun. Says the Rebbe, exactly so, page 446. Exactly so, figuratively speaking, is the very existence of the world and everything in it fulfilled in relations to its source, which is the light of the Ein Sof, as is explained there at length. This then is the true meaning of God's unity, that He alone exists and there is nothing besides Him. So did you understand so far the first part, that when we talk in Hasidic language, according to Chabad teaching, when we say there is only one, the God is the only one, it's not that there is one God and no two gods, but I still exist. It means that everything is God. It's only God. There is only one being, one existence. Everything else is God. We are merely words in His thought that express His desire, because God wanted to have a universe, and it came out in our brains, the words of thinking about my emotion. But the way I feel is equally by all, no matter what language. The language is a small tool that is only completely insignificant. What happens if I change my feeling? Those words are gone. I don't think of those words anymore. And therefore the universe And all its existence, all the galaxies, are just words in the brain that express a desire, an emotional feeling. And therefore, this is part of what God is. So anytime I disobey God or I serve God, I am still part of God. You cannot run away from God. Says the Rebbe. Now, when one contemplates deeply and at length at this matter of God's true unity, and by the way, some Hasidim will take their time, read it, and contemplate slowly, and that will alleviate all the. There was a Hasid who had a lot of trouble from his spouse, from his wife. But every time he would come, she would scream and yell at him. She wouldn't let him even sleep well because he was snoring, he was pushing, whatever. So you can see that he was a broken vessel when he came to synagogue. But after synagogue, he was a happy-go-lucky. He couldn't wait to come home for breakfast. So one day, a chassid turned to him and says, How? You are not an angel. How is it possible? He says, I know this chapter 33 by heart. And I take after prayer or before, I take my time to study it slowly and contemplate the details. And at the end, I say, thank you, God, for choosing me. And I walk home very happy, lucky man. I just want to share another point, another story.
Guys happy until he gets home. That's right.
Now, no comment. Now, when one contemplates deeply and at length on this matter of God's true unity, his heart will rejoice with this faith, his soul will be gladdened by it, to the point of rejoicing and singing with all his heart, soul, and might. For this faith is tremendous. When it fills one's mind, it actually constitutes an experience of the closeness of God. This, in fact, is the whole purpose of man and the purpose for which he and all the worlds, both upper and lower, were created, that God should have such a dwelling place here below, as will be explained further at length soon, how this earthly abode for God is the purpose of all creation. And I want to share, just stop for a moment. In 1974, I would like to say, the Rebbe asked that every Jewish child should learn 12 verses by heart. I, as a child at the time, we learned it by heart, those 12 verses, and we receive a gift. And my children know those 12 verses. Every Chassid knows them. And if, in fact, I was just a month ago in Israel, and on Shabbat we walked to the Kotel, to the wall, and we went through the Muslim quarter. On Shabbat, it's the shuk, it's the marketplace. You go down. It's a shortcut. It's a very quick. And as we were going, I have a nephew who is a Chabad emissary in Cyprus. He has 3 daughters, so he did not want his daughters to get scared, because you on both sides it's close. You can get claustrophobic because it's enclosed, and there are Arabs on both sides filling the place. So he said to his daughters, let's say the 12 verses. Let's shout, show the world that we own this place. We were a group of like 25 people, my sisters, their husbands, and other relatives. So he started shouting Torah, and they said Torah, Tziva. Anyway, as we get to the middle, now we crossing, a lot of people are also coming, and a lot of people are coming the other way. Suddenly we start hearing other people who are coming by, they hear the verses, they shout too. In other words, these are verses that a lot of non-Hasidic, some of them were soldiers that are stationed, soldiers that they started replying to the verses that the children were saying. These 12 verses are wildly spread. From the 12 verses, 4 are from the Bible, and 2 or 3 are from the Mishnah, and some of the Hasidic teaching. 2 of them are from Tanya, from this chapter. So 2 verses of the 12 verses are from Tanya. The first one is this one we just read the last paragraph, and the second one will come at the end of the chapter. Because joy In the Alter Rebbe's time, 270 years ago, joy is the most significant tool to overcome and live a good life. Joy is what the evil uses to fight us. Joy is the cheapest, inexpensive tool to fight evil. Because when we appreciate what God gave us and we realize that where we stand is not something that everybody is granted, it makes us appreciate and instead not pay attention to the challenges. And for that, I want to share with you a story. Obviously, I cannot reveal details, but it's a family that I know very well. It did not happen with me, but a family I know very well. They had a bunch of kids, 2 kids already, not a bunch. They had 2 kids, but they were boys. And the couple decided they want a girl. And they're going to do all the tricks in the book to have a girl. Sure enough, she got pregnant. It happened recently, less than 6 months ago. And so she got pregnant. Now they wanted to know that hopefully all the tricks worked. You know, you have Bobby tricks, you have doctor's trick, you have different medicine, different vitamins, hormones, whatever. As they did an early scan, the doctors told them that the fetus, the baby, has no legs and no hands. Don't have body parts. I'm sure you can imagine how depressed they became. It was very painful. They went through the process of the pregnancy because it was too late to abort. And I don't think they would have aborted because they were religious, they were Hasidic. And throughout the process, they would go into the doctor continuously, and the doctor said, they can't see legs, they can't see hands. And the girl, before she gave birth, she asked her mom to be there because she didn't even want to look at the child. That's how painful it was. Nobody should experience. And she told her mom that when the child comes out, she wants to hold, the mom should take the baby. She can't even look. Lo and behold, the baby comes out perfectly healthy, beyond, nobody can explain why, but it was a boy. So after they gave birth, the mother, she started crying from pain. She went through so much. And so the mother said to her daughter, called her by name and says, the baby is perfect. The baby is healthy. Do you want it? She said, of course, but he's a boy. She said, if I can, I'll punch you in the face for saying that. And of course, they love, I saw the child. They loved the child. And the idea that they wanted a girl, not a boy. If you mention that to them, the couple, they would get upset at you. We don't appreciate the miracles God makes every moment of our life. As Holy Harry says, the fact that he wakes up in the morning and he says, Modani, I thank you, God. I tell people the fact that I'm able to get up and walk to the bathroom, it's a miracle. Thank God. I appreciate it. And then everything else is insignificant. It is so true to realize that compared to God, everything, it's just no value. And yet God cares to keep me here. And yet God cares to make sure that I live my life. If I'm healthy, hopefully we all should be healthy. It is a reason to be very thankful and very happy. And that's what the Rebbe says. You know why God created us? To say thank you to him. He likes to be reciprocated for the goodness he does for us. How do you say to someone thank you if you're not having a happy face? Imagine someone tells me, oh, you have a birthday. And he comes with a very sad face. Here is a gift for your birthday. It doesn't make sense. If someone comes to a wedding, to my wedding, I want him to be happy. If someone comes to bring me to a birthday party, they got to be happy. If they are sad, they may as well not show up. It will not hurt as much as if they are sad. the same is in the universe. The only reason God created the universe is because he wants someone as Adam. As soon as Adam was created, he says, let us come bow down before our Creator and thank him. When we say thank you to God with a happiness, we serve God. You know what's the idea of Torah and prayer, all the mitzvot? To train us and allow us to get used to the idea that we have to be thankful to God. So when I do someone a favor, when I use a good, kind word towards somebody, I did God pleasure. I made God happy. If I live my life, I eat, I drink, I go to bed, I socialize, and I do it with joy, I am saying thank you to God. Imagine you have a child and you want to give your child everything so they should be a happy person. What if, God forbid, they turn to you and says, no, I'm not so happy because you didn't give me a Tesla, because you didn't give me a big fat bank account. It doesn't make sense. It hurts. What if you did not give them a lot, but they say, I love you, I care about you, you're my father, you're my mother, that makes so much, it warms up the heart. The reason is because we are a reflection of God. God created us in his image. So when I do something kind to myself, care for my health, care for my being, and I live a happy life, I am doing God a favor, so to say, connecting with God, bringing pleasure to God, and giving God a better reason to bless us, because he wants to hear more of that. He wants to experience more of that. I hope I made myself clear. Therefore, says the Rebbe, realize this, in fact, this is a verse from the 12 verses. This, in fact, is the whole purpose of man and the purpose for which he and all the worlds, both upper and lower, were created. What? That God should have such a dwelling place here below, as will be explained further at length. How this earthly abode for God is the purpose of our creation. So again, if I have a joyous life, if I feel uplifted and happy, I am serving God. Ivdu et Hashem besimcha. Serve God with joy. You cannot serve God without joy. Joy is the service of God. Man's faith in the unity of God fulfills his goal. For when God's unity is revealed in the mind and heart of man, this would become an abode for God. He is revealed there, just as one reveals himself completely in his own home. So when I create an abode for God, God is able to feel comfortable there. When I'm happy, God is comfortable. If my home is a happy home, if I feel happy, I'm enabling God to reveal himself, not to conceal, because when there is no joy, God conceals himself. How great is the joy of a common and lowly person when he is brought close to a king of flesh and blood, who furthermore lodges and greater still dwells together with him, not in the king's palace, but in his, the commoner's home. Imagine a king comes and says to your door and knocks on the door, so can I spend a night here? How joyous, how great you feel when this great God is dwelling with you. Just realize that's what God wants, to be with us when we are joyous. So this week's Torah portion is Teruma ve'asu li mikdash. Create a dwelling place for me so I can rest upon you, with you. How do you create a dwelling? Having a joy. And joy, when I have joy, I am having God with me. How much more so? How much more? Infinitely more ought one to rejoice in the nearness of the King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He, and in his dwelling together with men in this physical world, man's home. As it is written, for who is the man who dares to approach me, says God. Yet in one's awareness of God's unity and through self-nullification before him, one does come near to God. Furthermore, God thereby dwells with him and within him. That's why the rabbi is going to continue and tell us that God, that's why we have created to say thank you. I'm just going to touch upon it a little bit because next week I want to get into greater detail. For this ability to experience and to be absorbed in God's unity, it was instituted by the sages that one should render praise and thanks to God's name each morning, saying, every day part of the prayer we say, Ashreinu, how fortunate are we. Now, how good is our portion, how pleasant our lot, and how beautiful our heritage. And the rabbi is going to continue on with details. I just want to share. When you look at the Chassid, you always see paintings of Chassids or pictures of Chassids. They're always happy. You won't see a depressed Chassid. In addition, when you look for a classical painting of a Chassid, usually they dance. Why are they dancing? What's so significant about dancing? We'll discover in later on, because one foot is on the ground, but the other foot is lifted up. Because we are not going to become spiritual beings to remove ourselves from the earth, from the universe, but quite the opposite, to a part of earth. At the same time, we realize it's all godly. Therefore, there is no conflict between the universe and God. Therefore, there is a purpose. Therefore, I can serve God not only when I pray, not only when I study Torah, but leading a happy life. When I make someone happy because he's asking me a question, instead of saying, I'm busy, I have no time, I say, how can I help you? Is there something you can benefit? And I'm offering that help. I'm bringing joy to that person. I'm bringing joy to myself. What happens if I'm joyous? I have God coming into my dwelling. I'm allowing for God to be with me in my home, a simple home of the King of Kings. Did I make myself clear? I would like to stop right here. We'll continue next week, God willing. Thank you so much, everybody.